click go live last time.
Live streaming is on.
Good.
All right. Yeah. That's
Are we
good.
live?
Okay, but I have to. Oh, and I think this one, it looks like you're live. So
Well, a little orange box popped up on yours, so maybe that's good.
yeah. So I think that it's just that with the scheduled live streams, I have to click go live, but
Yep.
with these live streams, I don't have to, and that's what got me confused.
Fine.
Yeah.
Well, now we're not live anyway, so what the heck?
Oh no, I think we are live.
No, I mean we're an hour late, so.
Oh yeah, yeah. But there were 7 people waiting. So yeah, I'm just going to see if I can find the name of this stream that's happening right now, so I could share it in the group.
Yeah.
YouTube, your channel, live. Oh my gosh, it's the wrong screenshot here.
It's okay.
Okay, I think this should be the one. And then I'll just share it in the peak oil group.
Yeah, that'll work. Those are the people who care anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I'm doing all of this while on the live stream. Okay.
Yeah.
So here, meanwhile, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure.
And your.
Hi, my name is Iver Lofving, and I'm a retired teacher, and I have a Master's of Education for the University of Maine. I'm from New York originally, but I've lived in Guatemala, New York City, Vermont, and Costa Rica, a bunch of places, but I've lived in Maine longer than anywhere else. I've lived here for about 35 years. And what happened was I first learned about peak oil from one of my students who showed me Jay Hanson's die-off website, which was a real mind blower. I read the whole thing. And then I kind of forgot about it and denied it for a while. I kept flying around the world and got a big pickup truck. And I remember reading the Scientific American article by Colin Campbell around 1998. And that really opened up my eyes. But then after 9/11, I started reading, and it led me to it again. And it seemed to be the key to understand sort of everything that's going on in the world. And then we started to take it seriously. We formed a peak oil group, a transition group. We insulated. I bought a woodlot with a friend, and I started figuring some things out. We did electric and solar cars. And then the shale oil took over and everybody went back to sleep. Meanwhile, we managed to halve our fossil fuel consumption in our house, but lived just as well. In fact, we live better, and we're still cutting it down. So we made a film called Peak Oil: A Love Story, and it did a spot on CNN and tried to get the word out, but to no avail. It was a very well-made film, but not very popular subject. But it's on YouTube now, and it's called Peak Oil ... A Love Story. I showed it a few times in Waterville, up at Sugarloaf, up at the mountain, the ski mountain near here. Not much interest, but one guy showed up who does earthwork for rich oil people from Texas and stuff. And they were all sort of doing stuff here in Maine. They're fixing up old Intervale farms, which hadn't been used for like 100 years, up in the mountains. They like rich soil, but they were like little tiny valleys, very nice little places. And he asked them, like, why are you doing all this stuff? Why are we getting all this stuff together? And they told him to have a place to run when peak oil hits. And they wanted to be close to Canada and have a little place that they could go to when everything gets crazy. So it was interesting to have this guy there who really understood it. You know, not many people came, but he understood it. So I still really believe it's happening, especially since it peaked in late 2018. And now I'm watching to see what happens. You know, trouble is coming for sure. Everything is doubled, you know, the price of everything, except for our salaries, of course. Electricity right now is doubling in Connecticut, and it's going up by 50% as of January here in Maine. But that's all due to natural gas going up. So, you know, here we are in this little place. You know, Maine makes more electricity than it uses, but the fact is the New England grid needs that natural gas to stay on. So we've got to pay more for everything. And I think that's kind of what's going to happen with peak oil. We're going to kind of slowly get into the situation where we have to, everything we used to do fairly cheaply, not going to be cheap anymore. Anyway, that's just a little introduction to myself.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thanks. And okay, for those who don't know, can you give a brief explanation of what you consider peak oil to mean?
Well, peak oil means, there's the production of oil went up and up and up and up for a long time. And then it kind of hits this point where it's not producing as much, and then it starts to go down. And the big problem with that is the world wants to get 3% more every year. And, pretty much for a lot of our lives, we were going up by 3%, another 3%, 2 or 3%. And then in 2018, it kind of quit. And the problem is that the world still wants its 3%. It wants its 3% growth so that you can do more things, little developments happen, things get sort of cheaper for everybody, etc. And you can continue to do it. Well, when the world doesn't get its 3%, and then it's falling by 3%, then you have kind of a lag there. That all of a sudden you open it up and you got 6%. What's 3%? Now it goes up to 6%. And so every year that happens, unfortunately, we had the pandemic and everybody stopped using as much. And that was good for right after 2018. You think about it, 2019, 2020, all of a sudden we're in the pandemic. We didn't use as much. But now we're coming out of that pandemic and we want more. We want to go back to our lifestyles where we fly and drive and use huge amounts of fossil fuels every day. And it's not going to be possible.
Yeah. You're right. When was your CNN interview?
My CNN interview was around 2006, 2007. Maybe 2008. But anyway, around then, say 2007. And there was a big spike in interest in peak oil. There was a lot of interest. And so they sent people up to talk to me. And they kind of wanted me to be like this crazy survivalist person with this, but I basically just talked about peak oil. I said, I think we got to get ready for this thing. We've got to figure some things out. And so then we drove around my solar electric car, and showed them my little garden, and I split some wood, different things. And I think I kind of felt better after that, because I thought, I've told 50 million people about this. I don't have any real responsibility anymore. I've told them all. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, overall, doing our part.
Yeah.
And when was Peak Oil a Love Story documentary made?
We made that. A friend of mine, Nelson Cole, who's an amazing filmmaker, and I made that over a number of years, but we released it at the end of 2016. And we went around and showed it a lot of different places. And then we ended up putting it on YouTube. So it's on there, Peak Oil, a Love Story. And it's kind of about an hour. And it's Nelson does a really good job of telling a good story. So he's really, I don't even know if Nelson is completely convinced about peak oil, but he does a really nice job of telling a story. So he's the filmmaker. So I think it was really neat that, to do it with him. We did it over a number of years. We filmed all sorts of things, and we have a bunch of other things on YouTube also, like about maple sugaring and different things, and building electric cars, small electric cars.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here, you mentioned going to church. Could you give a brief overview of your beliefs?
Yeah, I go to the Universalist Unitarian Church, and the Universalist Unitarian Church is kind of lets people believe what they like, but it's also a place to get together to talk about our beliefs. And I also I'm sort of a Gaian, so I believe in the Gaia hypothesis was by Lovelock, and the idea that we live in a big self-regulating organism, the world, and that we're just a part of that. And that kind of allowed me, as a scientific sort of a person, to believe in, kind of a higher power or a bigger entity. And I do believe myself in a higher power. I think I need it. I need that. Like with the recovery community, believe in a power greater than yourself. And it doesn't matter what it is, but a power greater than yourself. And I found the Gaia hypothesis gave me a way to think of the whole Earth organism and being part of it as a power greater than myself. But the main thing for me is when things get to be too much for me and I'm worried about things and I'm freaking out and stuff, I just gotta give a little prayer and I say, I need a little pressure relief here. Need a little pressure drop, as they say in the reggae song, pressure drop. And then usually the next morning, I get a little relief. I get a little pressure drop. So that's my whole religion in a nutshell.
Wonderful. And do you believe in and follow Jesus's commandments to forgive, love, bless, and be kind to all beings, including our enemies?
Yes. And I also think that's a lot like the Buddhist belief also. And I kind of wonder how some people interpret this. I mean, I've read the whole, the New Testament, etc. And, I wonder how people get all this crazy interpretation out of it. I think he basically, basically was saying love one another, and try to make the place work. And I think that's why he was so threatening to the powers that be. And maybe we are by noticing something like peak oil.
Yeah, I recently read a book called Christ's Letters, which is a channeling of Jesus, and he says that he was very rebellious, and the reason they killed him was because they believed in a vengeful God, and he believed in a loving God, and they considered him to be a threat to their authority. And then there was this whole thing where he was, well, it's complicated. He was upset because nobody was listening, and then he knocked those tables over in the temple, and they're like, "See, this man is from Satan, and we have to kill him."
Yeah. I mean, well, he's a what do you call it? Speaking truth to power is always a scary thing to do, but also the idea of the money lenders, etc. In the temple. I mean, you're messing with the established order. Now, the thing about it is, the established order with peak oil, I mean, a lot of it can't work anymore. So, I mean, I think it's just common sense to figure something out. But maybe maybe that's threatening to the powers that be. But I think, figuring things out is, that's what we do. We're problem solvers.
Well, I think that at least the ultra rich, they want to survive. Like that guy was, they're getting ready for peak oil. They know it's coming. Yes. It's like for whatever reason they don't feel like it's necessary to notify the majority.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I kind of want to tell regular people. Mm-hmm. I haven't really succeeded in convincing too many regular people, but I kind of feel like. You talk to regular people and you say, maybe we should, try to figure out a bigger garden or try to figure out some, little thing, because I think any little thing can really help. Like, we have a very small solar system in our house, which is just one panel, 2 batteries, a little charge controller and, a few little LED lights and places to charge cell phones and things. But I think it helps a lot. I mean, we use it as sort of our emergency lights, but we also use it all the time. We listen to the radio and do things. And we can start to figure things out, I think.
Nice. Are you off grid or you're also on grid?
No, we're on the grid. Mm-hmm. I mean, everything we do, it's just a little of this, a little of that. I mean, having a bunch of different types of heat systems is good. Have a wood stove, which is going right now. Have a, heat pump. And a oil heater, just a little bit of oil. So, you cut down on all 3. And before you know it, you don't have to really be a purist about it, but you can really cut down the amount of fossil fuels you use and live just as well.
Yeah. And so now that oil production in Eroy is declining. Oh, first, would you like to explain to people what Eroy is?
Eroy is energy returned over energy invested. In other words, if you basically most oil came in, the original oil when they first drilled in Texas, remember this spindle top, all of a sudden it came gushing out. It was huge amounts of gusher oil. Well, that stuff is great because you just sort of stop it down and it has pressure and it just comes out and goes right into the tank cars and off you go. So it's well over 100 to 1. 1 barrel of oil is used to produce 100 barrels of oil and move them around. So when you have that kind of excess energy, it's really great. But then as the well starts to lose pressure and stuff, you have to do more and more to get it out of there until finally, of course, what we're doing is fracking, which is a huge amount of energy expended for not that much coming out. And Andre was talking about you were talking about the actual amounts. What was it? Shale oil is only
Arrow is like 5
to 1. So you have to have 10 to 1 to run a modern society.
Yeah. Oh, or 11 even.
11. Yeah. So we're not, a lot of the things we're getting for energy are not enough to run a modern society. So I think it's great. We keep getting more, we got more all the way through the early 2000s. And then now we're hitting a point where we're not getting more. So I think, in my humble opinion, I think we ought to figure out ways of living that don't require as much fossil fuels.
For sure. Or less energy in general.
Yeah, less energy in general.
Yeah. Now that oil production in Iroy is declining, what do you see as the most probable outcome for the world?
Well, I think, I can already see it happening. I don't even want to speculate that far out. Look, Maine in January, our electricity is going up by half. And that's because of natural gas, right? Natural gas is running short. Even though we're producing a huge amount of natural gas, maybe record year, it has to be shipped out to the rest of the world that doesn't have it, and because of the war and the Ukraine and different things. So basically, we are at a point where we're going to have to pay more for electricity and different things because there's a shortage. So I think we're going to have that continuing onwards. Like diesel, there's a big diesel shortage in the Northeast. So when you have diesel shortages, that's a problem because even if we can find enough to keep the trucks running and stuff, it's going to be a lot more money. Heating oil is already double what it was last year. Yep. So, right there, boom. Heating oil is very similar to diesel. It's the same stuff, basically. So, I feel like we're at this point where all of a sudden we're hitting these limits. And I think these limits are going to continue to pinch more and more and more until some things have to change. Now, my fondest wish would be that we could figure out a way to keep everybody kind of fed and housed and warm. But I almost feel like what's going to happen is they're going to turn off the poor so that everybody can keep flying around and things, which is kind of ridiculous.
Turn off the poor?
Turn off, not turn them off, but make it so expensive to heat your house and different things so that it makes it very hard for people who don't have a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, a small percentage of people, continue living their lifestyle.
Yeah. And how are you personally preparing for the decline and eventual collapse of fossil fuels?
Well, I'm doing some things. I've always been doing things, trying to cut down the amount of fossil fuels we use, trying to keep ourselves a little simpler. But I'm 63 years old, so I'm getting up there. And whatever happens, I'll either survive it or won't. So my main idea is to teach people some of the skills that are necessary. Like I've been teaching kids sailing, which is really fun in the summers. And I also have been, we had a maple syrup operation, a little maple sugaring operation, and a lot of kids helped us out. And so they kind of learned about, doing a wood lot and making maple syrup and cutting wood and, figuring out ways of making something out of land. And so, it's kind of a food forest, right? So, and I think that's the idea, is to teach, the next generation and the next generation, how to grow a garden, things like that. I think that's really my role nowadays. I can't see it. I can do all sorts of things for myself and, maybe get a few more years or something, but I'm not as enthusiastic about that as I am about helping people out, to teach them to like Andre's doing, teaching people how to use a food forest is huge.
Thanks.
How to create it, and you got the years too to do it. So that's the amazing thing is, if you have years to do it,
Mhm.
great,
And do you grow your own food?
Oh yeah, I have 3 gardens, different sorts. Some are for fresh vegetables. Some are potatoes and things, and then I have another one. I grow some squash and stuff. So they all have sort of different things. And I find I'm learning a lot about growing without too much irrigation. Kind of dry land growing, and I love that kind of stuff.
It's great.
Yeah.
And do you grow your own firewood?
Well, I used to, and I still do. I still, I only have about 4 or 5 acres now, but some of it is spruce, so that's not fantastic wood. But I do grow, I do chop up some firewood, and I find some, talk to people, buy a little. I only use about a cord a year. We have a pretty well insulated house, so it we only use about a cord a year, and I like to use it instead of in like a outdoor furnace or something like that. I like to use it in a wood stove that you look at, because then you
Nice.
notice, oh, it's burned down a little, put some more in there. So
Mhm.
every stick you cut, you get to watch it burn.
Nice. I like that. And how much land would you recommend for self-sufficiency?
Well, if you can get 5 or 6 acres, it would be a really good idea. But I also think that you can do just fine. I mean, I just got a book called The Half Acre Homestead, and if you're in a town area or something like that, if you can get a half an acre, like right now, I'm kind of living on a half an acre here, and I have a little maple syrup operation. I had a much bigger one. I had 20-acre one, but now I just have a little half-acre maple syrup operation in the backyard, and little garden and different things. And you can make an awful lot of your substance just off of your little plot.
Mhm.
So I mean, not everybody is able to get a lot of land, but I mean, if you can get it, it'd be great to have 4 or 5 acres.
Sure.
Yeah.
And what do you think about a controlled transition to a rural agrarian way of life for the populace?
I like it. I think we're going to have to do that, and I think what it's going to be more of like a village model, where people live in sort of a village.
Yeah.
It's much harder to kind of live out in the out by yourself, kind of and be a sort of self-sufficient. I'm thinking more like the regionally self-sufficient,
Yeah.
where you work together.
Yeah. I was looking, and the average village in India is around 300 people or less. And so I was calculating that around here, where we need, well, here in Grey Bruce, we need 1.2 hectares per person. So that would be about 360 hectares for a village.
Perfect.
And then you could have like, usually humans gather in groups, like churches average 50 to 60 people. And so you could have like 5 or 6 churches in one of these villages.
Well, I know the Amish find that they are about 400 people, and then they split off. They find that's the perfect size to sort of, have a little community of 400 or 500 people.
Well, the Hutterites, the Leherlut Hutterites, they split off at 150.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, they're the traditional ones. Most of the Mennonite and Amish congregations around here also average 50 to 60 in the congregation itself. But yeah, they range. So they usually, what happens is they grow, and then once they get too big, like close to that 150 or 120 or whatever mark, then they clique into like 2 separate groups, and they're like, I don't like your buttons. Oh,
Yeah.
your what do you call it? Your bonnets are the wrong color or something like that,
Yeah.
and then they split in that way, and then yeah, that's kind of how it goes on some very minor point, but it's to maintain this kind of, because 50 to 60 is kind of just that like sweet spot for social networking.
Oh, I agree. That's a good number
Mhm.
to kind of connect with. And I'm you be living with 50 or 60 people, but I'll bet there are other places that you trade with and you connect with, and you kind of, you know, maybe a social center would be bigger, you know, you get to a bigger place, you know, the different things. But I mean, you know, we're definitely going to break off of get down to a much simpler lifestyle and place. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I was thinking, you know, 150 years ago, you know, most of the people in, you know, the United States and different places in the world, you didn't have to provide them with food. You didn't have to, you know, heat, all these things. Now it's kind of like everybody's provided with a lot of things. But, you know, 150, 200 years ago, most people made their own, you know, everything, clothing,
Yeah.
things. But they would trade. You know, there'd be a lot of trading going on,
Mm-hmm.
and ways of kind of connecting with other groups of people.
Yeah. And how are you active in your local municipal or county politics to help with them transitioning?
Well, I just tried to run for state representative, and here's my card here. Iver Lofving for state representative, but I didn't actually make it because I don't know. I did pretty well. I got about 40% of the vote. There's another one.
Wow, 40%. That's great.
Yes, 60-40. That was like the usual thing. But I don't know. I mean, I was hoping that if I got into the state as a state representative for this town, then I would be able to talk to people about, you know, what are we going to do? Not say the word peak oil because that freaks everybody out, but just like, what are we going to do? So my big idea was weatherization. Why
Uh-huh.
can't we weatherize some of the existing buildings? Get in there. You know, we had a thing called Keep Maine Warm about 10 or 15 years ago, where you basically get in there and you put plastic down, and you know, plastic over the windows, and you know, more efficient light bulbs and things like that. And one woman, we went into her house, and I opened up underneath the kitchen cabinets, and I was looking underneath there, the sink, and I swear I could see a raccoon looking up at me. So we fixed that up, and you know, she was probably using 10 or 15 gallons of heating oil that year just to keep that, you know, the outside space, you know. So once we closed that up, and she was complaining that it would freeze down there and stuff. So just simple things
Mm-hmm.
that we could do to help our neighbors out and get ourselves ready for, you know, kind of more expensive heating oil.
And can you mention also what you did with the conservation authority?
Yeah, I was a member. I was the head of the Conservation Commission, and we did a you know, comprehensive plan for the town. And the interesting thing was, you know, 10 years before, most of the farmers in our town were commodity farmers. In other words, they made milk for something like, you know, Oakhurst Dairy or something like that. And 10 years later, we had a fairly thriving farmers market, and most of the farmers in the town were then marketing directly. So they weren't selling wholesale. They weren't sort of like commodity farmers. They were selling directly to the people, you know, in different ways. And I thought it was very interesting that, you know, that had changed that much. So the transition is already happening. We just don't, you know, we don't even see it, but it's already happening.
Nice. All right. And do you have any last remarks or anything else on your mind you would like to share with our viewers?
Well, I'd like to say that there is something you can do about peak oil. I mean, I know it's a predicament, and with a predicament, you can't, you know, a thing. It's like aging. You can't fix it. You know, you're going to get older, and then things are going to happen and stuff. But I feel like, you know, just like with aging or anything, there are ways of kind of making it, you know, a graceful transition. You know, aging with grace, etc. So I think that there are ways of living so that, you know, we can figure out a way to live on less and less fossil fuels and have a perfectly nice life. You know, like right now we're talking on the computer. We don't have to fly to wherever it is we all live
Yeah.
in to have
Mm-hmm.
a conversation about what we're going to do. And I think, you know, like we have a solar system in our house and we use very little energy. It's just one panel and two batteries, and you know, we're able to live on that. And then you're able to get around town with something like a solar electric car, or, you know, I mean, my idea is just we can figure things out. We can, you know, don't give up hope. keep trying.
incremental progress.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I hope people get a chance to see my film on YouTube. It's called Peak Oil, A Love Story.
Yeah. And we will link it in the description below.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
I think it worked.
Oh, yeah. And hopefully we will be interviewing John Peach or someone else next week. And we may have a panel discussion sometime in the future.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Awesome.
Thank you,
All right.
Andre.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, I ended